Good morning, folks. I thought I'd do a quick video today on hand loading ammunition. If you are an experienced hand loader, there's not going to be a whole lot in here that's going to be of value to you. If you're brand new to hand loading, or if you've ever wondered about hand loading, I thought I would try to do a quick video here just to maybe answer some questions and show you a little bit about what's involved to give you a better idea if maybe it's something you want to get into or if it's something you want to stay out of. Before I get started in the actual demonstration, I wanted to try to dispel a couple of myths. The first one is that you spend far less money by loading your own ammunition than you do by buying factory ammunition. As a general rule, you do spend less per round if you load your own than you do if you buy factory ammunition. However, the thing you have to keep in mind is there is a considerable outlay of money that you have to be able to load your own ammunition. At present, I probably have a couple of $1,000s invested in the equipment that I use to load my ammunition, and the balancing act that you have, or the thing that you have to weigh out for yourself, is do you shoot enough on an annual basis to make up for the amount that you're going to spend in order to be able to get the equipment and components to load your own ammo. If you only shoot a couple of hundred rounds a year or less, you're probably never going to realize enough in savings on your ammunition to make up for the amount that you're going to spend on your hand loading equipment. If, on the other hand, you shoot several thousand rounds of ammunition per year, you may well want to look into hand loading. Again, you're probably not going to spend any less money, but what you will do is be able to shoot more rounds of ammunition per dollar that you spend, because when you buy your own components, and particularly when you have your own brass, the amount you invest in each individual cartridge is going to be less than you would typically spend for factory loaded ammunition. If you're reloading ammunition for handguns and you're using an inexpensive lead bullet, although lead is getting more and more expensive all the time, it seems like, you're going to be able to reload very economically for something like, say, a .38 Special. If you are loading precision ammunition for rifles and you're using a good match grade bullet, you're not going to save quite as much on a per round basis as the handgun shooter with the lead bullets. The other thing I want to address is the difference between hand loading and reloading. A lot of people will use the term reloading generically for any time you construct your own cartridges. I do draw a distinction between these two. Reloading is typically done for economic purposes. It is nothing more than taking a fired cartridge and replacing the components that are used each time the cartridge is fired to be able to then go back and use that cartridge again. Typically, as I mentioned earlier, this is the most economical way to go about shooting. The difference between reloading and hand loading: in hand loading, we are crafting ammunition for a specific purpose. In some instances, we are crafting ammunition specifically for a certain firearm, where we want some level of performance out of that firearm that we don't think we get with factory ammunition, or that we are trying to replicate by spending a little less money. This is typically what we're doing with precision rifles. We are trying to match our ammunition specifically to the firearm that's going to be used in, and we are trying to hold various tolerances to the exact point where they need to be to give us that level of performance in a specific firearm. For example, one of the things you can do when you hand load your ammunition is you can vary the length of your cartridge, or actually the seating depth of your bullet, to be able to match specifically the point that your rifle is most accurate with that ammunition. That's going to vary somewhat from firearm to firearm, and it takes a little bit of experimentation to figure out where it needs to be with yours. Whereas when the factory loads ammunition, they have to make sure that they load cartridges that are going to work reasonably well in whatever firearm they're used in. So we do have an advantage as hand loaders in being able to craft that ammunition to a specific firearm. This is the one area also where I will change what I said earlier just a little bit, where I was talking about the volume of ammunition that you fire on an annual basis, offsetting the cost that you will have invested in your equipment. If you are trying to load the absolute most accurate ammunition you can, even if you don't shoot that much of it, you might want to look into hand loading, because it does give you that control over various aspects of your cartridge to be able to match it to your firearm. Even something like powder selection. Some powders in a given combination with a certain bullet in a certain rifle will yield more accurate results than a different powder in that same rifle. Whereas with factory ammunition, again, you have to use basically whatever the factory loads in their ammunition. Before I go any farther, I suppose I should define exactly what hand loading involves. Basically, it involves taking a fired cartridge and replacing the primer, the powder, which of course is inside, and the bullet in such a way that you can then reuse this same brass case in the form of a loaded cartridge in a firearm again and continue shooting it. Brass life varies from cartridge to cartridge, and it depends on several factors, one of which is how the pressure to which you load your cartridges. With handgun ammunition, cases last a long, long time. You can go through a lot of refirings with handgun ammunition. With rifle ammunition, it's going to vary. There was a study done a while back where someone used, I believe it was 300 Magnum ammunition, which is what I just had there. And some of the cases went as many as 20 firings before they started to crack and fail. Other ones didn't go nearly as much, depending on brand and manufacturer, and again, loading pressures and things like that. It will have a bearing on how long your brass is going to last. There are things that you have to look for when you are loading your own ammunition in terms of your brass to determine whether or not that's going to be safe for another firing, or if it's time to discard that piece of brass and go to something else. You can either use brass cases that were fired originally as factory loaded ammunition, or you can purchase brand new unfired brass if you want to, and then use that over several cycles. One of the most important things that you're going to have to get right out of the gates is a good reloading manual. And what will probably happen, and definitely what has happened with me, is I have purchased several reloading manuals over the years as different cartridges come out or manufacturers change their products, or you just want to look at the way a different manufacturer goes about things. You will probably end up with a selection of reloading manuals. When you get your reloading manual, read it. The good ones at the beginning will have a section that explains exactly what is necessary in order to load your own ammunition. It will show you things about the cartridge cases to tell you either when you're seeing excessive pressure signs or when that case is getting ready to fail. Read your reloading manual. If you have a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them, don't think, well, I don't need to read that first section of the manual anymore because I already know it all. Take the time to go through and read it. The people that put those together are very knowledgeable. They are ballisticians. They are people that work in the field of ammunition, and they have put together the best information they can to try to keep you as a hand loader out of trouble. Equipment-wise, you are going to need a good press. The one I'm using here today is a RCBS Rock Chucker. I've had this for a number of years. When you start out with a good press, it will last almost indefinitely. Other than maybe small things like priming arms and things like that, these things are almost indestructible. You will also need a set of reloading dies. These will vary somewhat depending upon the specific cartridge that you are loading. Generally speaking, you cannot use one set of dies for more than one type of cartridge. The only exceptions to that would be something like a 38 Special and a 357 Magnum, or a 40 Smith & Wesson and a 10mm, which will allow you to use the same dies. But typically, whatever cartridge that you're going to reload, and this is especially true of rifle cartridges, is going to require a set of reloading dies specifically for that cartridge. You will also need a shell holder, which is what this is back here, in order to hold the case in your press while you're taking it through the various hand loading steps. The components you will need in order to load are going to be your case, which we've already talked about briefly, and that can be either factory new or previously fired cases. You will need powder, and this is going to be somewhat specific. Your reloading manuals will indicate what powders are appropriate for the specific cartridge that you're loading. Bullets, which is what we have here, and you can get bullets for a variety of different purposes, from hunting to match shooting to plinking, just about any shooting use you can imagine. There's a bullet that's designed specifically for that. And the last would be primers, which is what we have here.